Hello and welcome to this week's episode. We are still continuing with the series of infertility, and today we want to talk about a very important aspect in infertility, and that is age. How does age go with infertility? It's one of those most important factors when you're talking about infertility, and especially in women. So we are going to talk about the myths and facts about age and infertility. Welcome. Now, a woman is usually, or a female for that matter, is usually born with a finite number of eggs. What that means is born with a specific number of eggs. And those are usually at birth almost 1 million, at most 2 million. And then as time goes by, there's attrition. That means they keep dying off. By the time a woman reaches, or rather a female reaches puberty, that would have reduced from that 2 million to around 500,000 eggs alone. And as time goes by adulthood, they would have reduced to around 300,000 eggs in the body. That continues to reduce. By the time one reaches 40 years, you are remaining with less than 25,000 eggs. Now, what is interesting is, per cycle, a woman loses around 1,000 eggs per month. These are immature eggs which never get released, but they die off. So a woman will actually lose 1,000 every cycle, and at the expense of releasing one egg. But this loss is not dependent on the type of contraception, and you can't stop it. It's just how nature works. So there's no type of contraception that you'll use to slow it down. There's no lifestyle that you can adopt to slow this. It is basically how we were created. By the time a woman reaches menopause, she would have ovulated around 400 eggs in her lifetime. That also depends on if she had other contraceptions. Now that one will come in, the type of family planning and the like. But on average, 400 eggs will be released in a lifetime of a woman. Now, the best time to conceive, biologically speaking, is below the age of 25. That's biologically speaking. And that is physically speaking, in terms of fertility in human beings. It's actually best at the age of 24, what medically we call fecundability. That is, the ability of a woman to conceive is at its peak at the age of 24. Now, below the age of 30 years, the ability to conceive is high, and it is around 30%, 25-30% per month. So what that means is, and by the way, in human beings, our fertility as mammals is not very high. It ranges way down, way below other mammals. So for a woman who is below the age of 30, the ability to conceive per month with regular intercourse, and she's ovulating, is around 25-30%. Now, after 30 years, it continues to reduce. By the age of 38, it would have reduced to around 15%. Above the age of 40, going to 45, it would have reduced to 5%. So if one is around 45 years, in fact above 42 years, the ability to conceive per month is less than 5%. And here we are talking about natural conception in the population. Of course, you know of examples of women who may have conceived much, much later. But in general terms, That is, those are the figures which are in the general population. So that informs us that insofar as fertility is concerned, age is one of the most single important factors to consider. If you're planning to conceive and all the boxes you've ticked, it's probably about time. But of course, life is life. So there are other considerations when one is having a baby or having children. Now, what are the options of women who come to us and they can't conceive because of age? Now, we have said that age and fertility, they go together, and as a woman ages, the fertility goes down. So we would generally do all the investigations to confirm that there is no other condition which may be causing that. Assuming that we don't have the other conditions we talked about last week in terms of fibroids, in terms of endometriosis, tubal blockage, polycystic ovarian syndrome, all those things which can explain infertility. A number of women, it's just the age which explains their inability to conceive. So in those cases, what we do is to investigate and find out, as we have just said, how much of these eggs are remaining in the body. You can only produce what you have. So we do hormonal tests to show if there are adequate ovarian reserve, there are enough eggs to be stimulated. If there are enough eggs to be stimulated, then we give medication to induce ovulation. And then we would walk the journey with the couple in terms of timing when she's ovulating and when they can time the intimacy to coincide with the ovulation. Alternatively, if that is not working, then around the time of ovulation also, the husband can produce the semen, which we prepare in the lab, and we do what we call intrauterine insemination, where we prepare the semen and then we deposit it inside the uterus for it to have a shorter travel distance towards the egg. Alternatively, we can still advise for IVF, that's in vitro fertilization, where the woman can still produce her eggs. We harvest those eggs and we fertilize outside the body, and after fertilization, we return them back to the uterus. It is something which we talked about last week. Now, the occasions when we do the investigations and the woman doesn't really have any eggs to induce. So meaning, if you give medication to induce ovulation and there are no eggs, you're not going to get any eggs. So those are the cases where we advise a couple to have donor eggs. Just like in men, they can have donor sperms. In women, we have donor eggs. In which case, then we would give injections, medications, hormones to prepare the woman for a conception. Even though she's not able to produce the egg, would probably get an egg from anonymous donors, and using the husband's semen or sperm, the egg is fertilized, we incubate in the lab, and the embryo is transferred now to the index woman, and hopefully then it picks up and she will carry the baby like any other pregnancy. It's only that she was unable to produce her own eggs, but had to utilize an anonymous, most of the time it's anonymous, egg, which is donated by somebody who doesn't know where the egg will be utilized, of course with permission. And those babies will be as normal as any other baby. If there's any abnormality, it's just like any abnormality in any other naturally conceived child. In other situations though, you may find that a woman has aged in such a way that it may not be feasible, maybe due to previous conditions or otherwise, maybe hypertensive, maybe she's also diabetic, maybe she's also obese on top of the age. In those situations, we could use a surrogate. A surrogate in that case, then you may have a donor egg, or if she's able to produce an egg, that's still fine. And then we get a surrogate to carry the pregnancy on behalf of the couple. But in this case, of course, the male sperm is used to fertilize the donor egg, and the baby thereof, of course, belongs to the couple. So some of the experiences that we have in our consultation rooms as doctors who deal with these conditions, as gynecologists, are sometimes misconceptions out there. We do often get women coming to us, understandably so, because of social media and what has been there in the news, trending and all that. Maybe they have seen a woman who is in her 60s, 70s, who has conceived and given birth to triplets or quadruplets or twins for that matter. And then for some unfulfilled dream, justifiably so, comes to us asking for whether she can also have a child of her own. The truth is, those conceptions past 50 years, and most often past 45 years, they need assistance, what we call artificial reproductive technology. And that is where your fertility specialist comes in to assist first to see whether there are other conditions which can make the woman's health go to the negative, and the ability of the woman to carry a pregnancy. And it's not so common that we actually do IVF, that's in vitro fertilization, in such women. It carries its own risks, although it is doable. So my advice to you is, age is an important aspect. If you've ticked those boxes and you're in a space where you feel you can actually have a baby and be able to support that particular baby, it's better earlier than later in terms of fertility, because age is a real factor. But of course, life being life, there are other considerations which will come into play, which sometimes are more important than getting a baby. Today we are talking about age and fertility. In this continuing series of infertility in men and women, or rather in couples. Don't forget to subscribe and share. This information may be useful to somebody out there, or your friend or family. If you need to see us or see the nearest doctor to you, our number is below. Thank you. See you next week.